We all know that the Nintendo Switch is one of the most loved consoles of all time, selling over 150 million units and probably one day reaching that number one spot. The console itself has had 3 different versions and now even a successor that became the fastest selling console ever. But if we take a look back at what it got us here, was the Switch really as successful at launch as we remember? 2017. Nintendo just dropped their brand new console, the Nintendo Switch, because you can switch from handheld to the TV. The idea was actually really simple. Nintendo basically took what they were trying to do with the Wii U and made it into one device, and honestly, it works perfectly. Well, except for the Joy-Cons. They were small, not the most comfortable controllers ever made, and then there was stick drift. This became one of the biggest hardware problems Nintendo has ever had. Your character would start moving even when you weren't touching the stick because parts inside the controller would wear down or fail. And replacing them wasn't cheap either. If one Joy-Con broke, you were looking at around $50 just to replace it. Some early Joy-Cons even had connection issues with the console, and a lot of people, including me, ended up getting stick drift later on. It definitely wasn't the best first impression, but thankfully the games made people forget about those problems pretty quickly. Nintendo launched the system with 1-2 Switch, a $60 game that a lot of people saw as more of a tech demo than a full game. It was fun for showing off the new Joy-Con features, but most people weren't buying a Switch just to play that. Then there was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This game completely changed Zelda. The giant open world, climbing absolutely everything, the physics, and the freedom to explore it made it feel like unlike anything Nintendo had made before. It really was one of those games that only comes around once in a generation. Well, until Tears of the Kingdom came out. The only downside, it also released on the Wii U. About 2 months later, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe released, and around the same time, Nintendo launched ARMS, another game that was showed off what the Joy-Cons could do with motion controls. ARMS was fun, but a lot of people still looked at it as another game built around showing off the hardware. Then during this summer, Splatoon 2 arrived after the success of the original on the Wii U. And finally in October, Nintendo released what I think is the best 3D Mario game ever made, Super Mario Odyssey. Cappy completely changed how Mario played. Instead of just jumping on enemies, you could become them. Every kingdom felt different, movement was buttery smooth, and there was so many little secrets that it was almost impossible to stop playing. At this point, it was obvious. The Switch was a hit. Everybody wanted one, but there's something I think a lot of people forget. If you already owned a Wii U, the first year honestly wasn't that crazy. Breath of the Wild was also on Wii U. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was a Wii U port. Splatoon 2 is more of an upgraded sequel, but a completely different game. And games like 1-2 Switch and ARMS weren't exactly system sellers for most people. Honestly, if you already had a Wii U, the biggest brand new exclusive you were really missing out on was Mario Odyssey. People loved having Nintendo games on the go for the first time, but they also criticized the hardware problems, missing features like themes, folders, and Bluetooth, and paying $60 for many considered tech demos. Looking back now, it's easy to forget those complaints because the Switch library became absolutely massive over the next several years. Then 2020 happened. Animal Crossing New Horizons released at the perfect time. Millions of people were stuck at home during COVID, and Switch sales absolutely exploded. I think COVID accelerated the Switch success in a huge way. If that never happened, maybe the Switch would have still been incredibly successful, but I don't think it would have reached the same heights as nearly as quickly. Although, to be fair, Nintendo also had a pretty big game drought after Animal Crossing, so maybe they would have filled that time with other major releases. We'll never really know. So, was the Switch launch overrated? I don't think so. I think it was a great launch, but I also don't think you needed one in 2017 unless you really wanted portable Nintendo games or Mario Odyssey. Personally, I think the best time to buy a Switch was sometime after 2018 or early 2019. By then, there were way more exclusive to play, and you could still get one before the shortages hit in 2020. When people look back now, they remember the Switch as the unstoppable console from day one, but really, its first year was just the beginning. The launch was fun, the games were great, but the years that followed are truly what made Nintendo Switch one of the greatest consoles of all time.